Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill sitting here Sunday morning. Going to take a look at a football game that really has been circled on our calendars going back to the early months of the winter. Tennessee heading on the road to play Oklahoma. Oklahoma's first SEC matchup. It is going to be a rowdy environment, night game in Norman. And Dill, two teams that are kind of feeling different about themselves heading into this matchup, where you look at Tennessee, for lack of better terms, like it's been a death machine. 61 points per game put up on the board, number one in the country, only allowing 5 points per game. That's top 3 in the country versus an Oklahoma team that I think this defense is legit 100%. But I think Oklahoma fans would say the same thing. We haven't really played our best football going into this matchup. Now, a couple of different explanations. I think some key football players for this Oklahoma team have not been playing due to injury. And if you get some of those guys back, I think this Oklahoma team can look different. But this Tennessee team looks like they can't be stopped. Oklahoma on offense still trying to find an identity. This is still going to be a really good football game. 7.5-point favorites for the Vols on the road. Now, before we get into it, as always, let it fly in the comment section. Like, whether you're mixing it up with the opposing fan base, agreeing with the boys, disagreeing, that is the beauty of doing these game predictions. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, Dill, where I want to start with this football game, I think the national media is going to pose this as a quarterback duel between Nico, Jackson Arnold, two of the top quarterbacks back in that 2023, two quarterbacks that I think are exceptional, right? Two quarterbacks we've talked a ton about going back to their high school days. That being said, I kind of want to start along the line of scrimmage, specifically with this Tennessee rushing attack, that this is going to surprise a lot of people. You look at Tennessee's offense, they are running the football 66% of the time, 7.1 yards per carry, number 3 in the country, going up against an Oklahoma front seven that has been very good, only allowing 2.2 yards per carry. That is the strength of this team. I feel like it's good on good. How do you see this matchup playing out here?
I mean, I don't think – well, the interesting part is I don't think either team has seen the likes of front seven that the other's going to throw at them. I mean, 100%. Oklahoma hasn't seen an offensive line like Tennessee. In Tennessee, frankly, I'm not sure NC State's quite as good as we thought they are. I still don't think they're like a pushover, but they're not playing great football for what we thought we were going to get. So I don't think Tennessee's seen a defensive front like Oklahoma, who plays really aggressive into attacks and flies downhill. That's what I'll be looking at mostly is, first, can Oklahoma not get moved off the ball? Because that's been the key to what Tennessee is doing, is they're playing a very kind of vanilla run scheme in terms of what they're doing. It's base power, and they're just moving people off the ball, line it up, and see if you can stop us. And you've seen some good things. I think Jaden Jackson emerging for Oklahoma is huge, adding some depth. Obviously, you knew DeJoun Terry and Dominic Williams would be tough, be able to play physical. But I think I'm kind of interested to see, can those three guys and the other guys on that Oklahoma defensive line stand up to double teams in a way they really haven't been asked to do. You've seen them play a lot of teams that are trying to get to the perimeter and run outside the teeth of that Oklahoma defense just because they don't have the offensive line that Tennessee has. But that'll be the key function because, again, I think the issue is nobody's been able to keep Tennessee from moving them off the ball, and hence Tennessee's just been able to rock.
This is straight up good on good. Like, I think this is one of the best rushing attacks you see in the country versus one of the best run defense units that you'll see in the country as well. Now, I think the storyline here is, one, can Tennessee have success running the football like they've had the last 3 weeks? That's one question. But I think number two is this a game Tennessee relies a little bit more on Nico? Like, what makes this Tennessee offense so special is, yes, they can run that power scheme. I don't think a lot of teams can deal with what Tennessee can do running the football. Oklahoma might be one of those teams. And so if Oklahoma is allocating some bodies to the box, if they are really trying to fit up this run game, is this the game where we let the leash off Nico? Like, we've seen Nico play some really good football. He's been off the leash. But the last 2 weeks, he's been on the leash. And Tennessee hasn't really had to let him off the leash because Tennessee's just running the football on everybody. Is this the week that we see Nico where, again, you look at the passing attack, they're only throwing the ball at 33% of their snaps, but it's 10.3 yards per play. That's number 10 in the country. If there was a kind of weakness or matchup you might be trying to exploit, it's probably the vertical passing attack against this Oklahoma secondary, where one of the biggest changes you've seen with Zach Alley coming in, these safeties are a little bit more aggressive, trying to take away the middle of the field, trying to get turnovers. There will be some one-on-one matchups for a guy like Dante Thornton or Brew McCoy or Brazel down the field. Can Nico in this Tennessee offense make Oklahoma pay if they're going to try to sell out and stop what Tennessee can do on the ground.
And I think the other side of the coin is if it gets to a bit more of a shootout and they have to throw the ball a little bit more. One thing Oklahoma, I think their defense has done an incredible job in the secondary, and they've had some coverage busts, leaving guys open a little bit too often for my liking, at least, and I'm sure a lot of the Oklahoma fans. But one thing they're doing when they have chances to get their hands on the ball, they're doing that. And that's something I think you've started to see emerge under Brent Venables. They've done a better job taking the football away. And obviously, Nico up till now really hasn't have to play with that. He's always been able to play within himself, let's say. That's probably
I think Nico's done a great job like being a young quarterback.
But he really hasn't. Again, that's where Oklahoma, if they can really be aggressive, take away the run, if their linebackers can have good games, fly downhill and kind of take away that rushing attack Tennessee wants to have, I think that'll be their best formula to making things happen. Because, again, even in that NC State game, there were a couple throws I'm sure Nico would wish he would have back. In Oklahoma, for them, I think they're going to have to capitalize on that because, again, that's probably how you slow this Tennessee offense down, because there's not really other weaknesses, if you will.
Yeah, I look at two of the key matchups I have for Tennessee, Oklahoma on this side of the football. One, Oklahoma, you got to stop the run. Like, if you can't stop this Tennessee rushing attack, you're pretty much dead in the water. I do think Oklahoma will be able to have some sort of success stopping Tennessee's rushing attack. The other thing I'm looking at is, Dill, can Tennessee and Josh Heupel, you talked about Oklahoma busting some coverages. Like, know who's really good at taking advantage of wandering eyes of safeties and lack of communication? Is Josh Heupel scheming up the passing attack. So can Josh Heupel scheme up some of those big explosive plays where you're getting a guy running scot-free like he was able to do when you go back and watch some of those Alabama games? That's another thing that I think could kind of change this game, is this Josh Heupel passing attack, scheming up some miscommunications and hitting some of those explosive plays. Now, let's flip the side here, talk about this Oklahoma offense versus Tennessee defense that I think finally people are coming around to like recognizing this is a legit defense. Like, they've given up 5 points per game throughout the first 3 weeks. That's number 3 in the country. Everybody wants to talk about Nico, but this Tennessee team is legit on the defensive side of the football, specifically in the front seven and on the defensive line. My biggest question mark is, Dill, this Oklahoma offensive line. It's been a rotating door. They haven't really found their starting five. I think you might even see another starting five going up against Tennessee. This is not – there's two keys for Oklahoma. One, you got to figure out how to stay on schedule on offense. You saw them go to Jackson Arnold in the run game a little bit more. Say, hey, if we can't run the football between the tackles with our backs, we're going to start getting Jackson Arnold a little bit more involved in the rushing attack, which I think certainly helped. Dill, if you're Oklahoma – you have to stay on schedule, because this is not a Tennessee defense you want to live in those third and longs where guys like James Pierce and company are pinning the ears back and trying to get after the quarterback.
And that's the biggest concern, because, again, I think when Jackson Arnold's been able to play in a bit more rhythm and get the ball out of his hands quickly, that's when it's worked. Him and Deion Burks really have a great connection. I think he's developed a really good connection with Bauer Sharp. So when they have that opportunity to get the ball out quickly, play on rhythm, and make things happen in the air, they've been pretty good. The problem is, obviously, they're not running the ball well against teams that are far inferior to what Tennessee is, and that's really starting with their offensive line. I think you said it. If they get their guys back, like Jake Taylor's a guy I think that he needs to play.
Hickman as well. It's been and again, I don't. The Oklahoma offensive line, Oklahoma fans know this too. Like, we've talked about this since the summer. Like, that's been the biggest question mark about this team heading into 2024. I don't know if they figured it out. We always said you got a 3-game runway to figure it out before you host Tennessee. I don't know if you figured it out throughout the first 3 weeks. Now, getting some guys back healthy might certainly help.
Well, because frankly, I think the center positions really, really struggled at times in this game. I think, again, getting back Hickman would be huge. I think Jake Taylor, we've talked about it. They don't really have guys behind Jake Taylor and Sexton who I think you really love the idea of them playing big-time SEC football games. I just don't think like Tarquin, Spencer Brown, even Howland are quite there at that level. So, again, Jake Taylor, Sexton, I think if you can have those two guys healthy and then Hickman, I think you give yourself a shot, because Nuevo is playing really, really good football. I think they can find another guy at that guard spot to make it work, whether that's Eugene Brooks, however they do it, Ozeta. But they need to be healthy up front, because, again, this Tennessee defensive line, they don't give you any breathing room. They have 4 or probably 3 lines of guys who they can throw in. They do a bunch of different things.
Everybody wants to talk about James Pierce, and he's awesome. Like, he's going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. It's not me dumping on him. there's like 7 guys that'll be playing in the NFL at some point during their career on this.
Like, you got to recognize how good guys like Easton are, or Amari Thomas, or Omar Norman Lott. Like, these guys
dogs on the inside
are playing so good. They're making a lot of negative plays. And again, that's been something Oklahoma certainly struggled with, is getting behind the sticks and then letting guys tee off on them in the pass rush.
Yeah. I think another thing I'm looking at is if Nick Anderson's back. Like, they've just missed that vertical presence. Look, Deion Burks is awesome in that short intermediate route tree. He is clearly the wide receiver one in this offense. Bauer Sharp has been a revelation at the tight end position. They don't really have a guy that can work the deeper third, right? Obviously, a guy like Brennan Thompson, who's really fast, but definitely struggles dealing with contact. If you get Nick Anderson back and you get that legitimate guy that averaged 18 yards per catch in 2023 back in this offense, I do feel like it opens it up a little bit more. And
you even saw Tulane not really respect their ability to put the ball down. I mean, they're playing with one safety for most of that game. They were giving them pretty heavy boxes. So, again, they certainly need a guy who can go punish you down the field. And they had their shots. Petaway had a shot. Jackson Arnold missed him. But it's probably the only one I'm thinking, like, ooh, that was really a miss. Like, they're just not getting open down.
Yeah, well, I think Jackson Arnold has to be better. Going more back to the Houston game, like, I think he's got to get better. Like, this is one of those games that you can't leave those plays on the table. And Jackson Arnold knows that. I shouldn't say he needs to get better. Just got to hit the plays. Like, we know Jackson Arnold can make those throws. This is the game where you can't leave those kind of plays off the board. And I think, secondly, Dill, continue to use Jack. Like, this is a game where you need to use Jackson Arnold in the run game. Like, I think you could beat Houston. You could obviously beat Temple not running Jackson Arnold. You saw them do it a little bit more against Tulane. This is certainly a game Jackson Arnold needs to be used. Secondly, Deion Burks needs to be absolutely peppered. Like, good things happen when this kid gets the football in his hands. And you look at Tennessee's secondary, it's been actually pretty dang solid. I don't think they were really tested yet through the first 3 weeks, but they're young, a little bit inexperienced. Make those young cats in the Tennessee secondary tackle Deion Burks in space, because he's one of the hardest ones to bring to the ground that you see in the country.
They did do a good job with Kevin Concepcion, but I think a lot of that is Grayson McCall's not playing the way he needs to play to make that happen. So, again, I'm kind of with you. Like, I think Tennessee has acquitted themselves really well in the secondary. I think they're playing with a bit of a different mentality. They're playing more aggressive, and they've done a better job tackling in space, obviously. But I don't think they've seen a team like Oklahoma yet. And again, we thought NC State was going to be something a little bit more explosive. Hasn't really been bared out on the field yet. Deion Burks is really, really good. Like, I don't want to understate how dynamic he can be at times.
I was gonna say something that I probably would eat. No, I'll say. I mean, I think Deion Burks is the best wide receiver in this football game, and the Tennessee fans might be and I was gonna eat it because I think it's close. I think Tennessee has some good right. Well, but like I that's kind of how I view Deion Burks. I think he's a legit dude. All right, Del. Let's get into the pick here. 7.5-point favorites for the Vols. This feels like a trap. I feel like I'm walking into a trap right here. Like, Oklahoma at home, 7.5-point dogs. Doesn't sound good to pick against them, but I think a lot of the Oklahoma fans would probably understand I'm going to have to go with Tennessee. Like, you just look at where these two teams are. I'm going to trust my eyeballs. Yeah, I might be walking right into a trap, get my head cut off. That being said, I look at these two teams and say, which has been the better football team that we're going to see in week 4? I think it's going to be Tennessee. I think Nico's a quarterback that can perform well on the road. I think that running game is going to travel. And at the end of the day, you can talk about this Tennessee offense all you want. My biggest question mark is, can Oklahoma block up this Tennessee front seven? I have my question marks about it. Give me the Vols. I'll lay 7.5 points. Who you got?
I mean, frankly, I think a lot of this will come down to who's healthy up front. Because if they play the way they played against Tulane up front, that's going to be a huge problem. I think if they can't run the ball at least reasonably effectively, that's going to be a problem all game. I think I'm leaning Tennessee, but again, I think if that offensive line does get a little bit more healthy, and guys like Hickman and Jake Taylor.
Yeah, I wonder. Sorry to cut you off, but I wonder if Oklahoma was like trying to get through the first 3 weeks, and then we're going to get some guys back. That could be a wrinkle in my thinking.
That's the hope for Oklahoma, because if they look the way they've looked these past couple games and they can't run the ball, I really see that being a huge problem. And then it's like, I really lean hard Tennessee, but I'm kind of with you. I feel like they have held some guys out. They haven't looked particularly great, but there's a lot of guys that if they play this football game, I think Oklahoma's avenue to being competitive in it and possibly winning opens up a little bit.
So you're going to sit on the fence? Or you're going to take a side here? Who you got?
I think I got Tennessee because I'm very concerned about what this Oklahoma offensive line is.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I just going to trust what I've seen throughout the first 3 weeks. Like, I think we have a decent sample size for both of these teams. I think Tennessee is playing like the better team right now. I don't love laying 7.5 points, but I'm going to trust what I've seen on the football field. The boys are both on Tennessee 7.5. Oklahoma fans, light it up in the comment section. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.